But now we're going to turn our attention to all the injuries that have just besieged both the Eagles and the Phillies. So let's go to the Barb's Harley-Davidson Sports Hotline and welcome into the locker room the Chief of Orthopedics Medicine at Virtua Sports Medicine, Dr. Sean McMillan. What's up, Doc?
Billy, how we doing, man?
All right, we're like, Doc, what's going on? Why can't we keep these guys on the field?
Yeah, it's a different year this year, man, especially with the Eagles. The conditioning, the training camp alterations, the pandemic, all this leads to these little, distal injuries, the hamstrings, the quads, they're just things that are prone to, deconditioning. And you're not going to get a guy that's, maybe ready to go week 1 in previous years, ready until maybe week 3, week 4, just cardiovascular-wise. You can't simulate that sort of activity, doing, soft drills and soft pads during August.
So, Doc, let's just go over some injuries real quick. Let's just go back to the Phillies. Romuto, he's got a hip flexor. Explain to us what a hip flexor is and how hard is it to recover from.
Yeah, so hip flexor, again, is a pull in the muscle that, attaches from your low back, comes across in the front of your thigh, and lets your hip go up and down. So think about a catcher. He's squatting down all the time. And, again, when you read some of the finer details, he has a bit of a quad injury, with this. So, again, the quad's the upper thigh. This is all of his explosion, the ability to get up and down and get into a catching position, even swinging a bat. He's not DHing because he has no push-off on that leg. So, again, this is something that's going to bother him. It's going to linger. The short side of it with a mild strain is about 7 to 10 days. So they're hopeful that they can get him back early next week as the season winds down. But it's going to linger probably for him, the rest of the season and even into the playoffs.
So, Doc, what do you do? Like, what type of treatment do you give it? How do you alleviate the pain?
Yeah, so this is a lot of work with the therapists and the trainers. They're doing a lot of soft tissue work, stretching it, heat. They're working on getting some muscle stimulation in there. In other words, get the muscle to try and contract to make it heal quicker. And then just time. You get the swelling out of there and let the muscle heal. So he's probably living in the training room right now, and they're doing all they can to sort of get this muscle on track as quick as they can and keep him loose.
All right, let's talk about Rhys Hoskins. He's got the left ulnar collateral ligament, and that's not on his throwing arm, which is odd. I mean, how will that affect him? Does he have to have surgery, and how long would he be out?
Yeah, so Rhys is an interesting one. It's his non-throwing arm, and again, he got injured trying to tag someone at first. So the guy ran into his catching arm and just basically hyperextended the elbow. So when you think about Tommy John injuries where you get this tear in what's called the collateral ligament on the inner part of the elbow, he doesn't need to throw a baseball with that. So they're hoping this can heal non-surgically with time and surgery. But the upside of that is if he does need a surgery, it's not one that keeps him out 12 to 18 months like a pitcher sees. Instead, hitters, depending on how you fix it, he could be back in 4 months or so, maybe 5 months. The issue for him right now with playing is simply when you tear this ligament, you actually irritate the nerve, the ulnar nerve, which we call the funny bone sometimes, and that will cause decreased grip strength in his hand. So he's having trouble gripping a bat and doing things of that nature. But if he can get some of that back, should be able to play the rest of the season and address this afterwards.
We're talking with Dr. Sean McMillan, Chief of Orthopedics and Sports Medicine for Virtua at the Willingboro and Camden campus. And let's look at Lane Johnson with the high ankle sprain. I think he injured that, Scooter, on December 9th last year. And I don't know, so explain to us about the Liz Frank or the high ankle sprain.
Yeah, two totally separate injuries. Liz Frank, you're thinking more about Alshon Jeffries. That's when you have a tear or an injury to the ligament in the center of the foot, and it kind of gives you your arch of your foot. That's going to give you trouble pushing off in jumping and running. Lane Johnson's injury, a little bit different, a high ankle sprain. This is where you actually roll the ankle, and you'll have think about your classic ankle sprain, but it radiates up the shin bone a little bit more, and that's going to cause pain with any sort of pressure. So he's not going to be able to get out of a stance. He's not going to be able to cut and come around on a pole if they're running some sort of some sort of a sweep. So those are injuries that he has. The most classic one we all think about now is Tua, the quarterback for the Miami Dolphins, had high ankle sprains, and they linger. They're a real bear. They take sometimes 8 to 12 weeks to heal, and a lot of guys have been opting just to do surgery now, which I believe Lane did undergo. just to try and treat this because, it does bother you and can keep you, bothered all season. So he looks ready to go. Apparently they held him out as a precaution week 1, but he should be out there and should be back to full strength pretty soon.
Hey, Doc, it's Scotty McKay. I mean, I know you talked about, obviously this year has been a lot different, especially with not having the training camp, stuff like that. But the hamstrings just seem to be this is something that we think that the trainers could be working on. Their stretching, making sure they're getting, the ligaments and everything ready to go. I don't understand why this is happening. They've got at least 6 players with hamstring injuries. It seems odd in one season for that to happen.
Yeah, this is a classic conditioning issue. We're seeing it around the league. We're seeing it in some of the college teams and even some of the local high school kids that are starting to practice now. We're seeing these little injuries. Again, it's a matter of just not having the right time to get your engine, so to speak. You think about it, these athletes are fine-tuned cars. And if you're trying to push it too soon and don't get that proper warm-up in there leading into the season, the muscles just aren't ready. So a lot of these guys worked out probably heavy, did a lot more weights than maybe normal because they usually cut that off a little bit sooner when the season comes. So these guys are maybe stronger, but they're not as stretched, and those hamstrings
tight.
are like guitar strings. Yeah, they're tight, and the slightest thing is going to go ahead and set it off. And because the season's so short and different, the teams are being a little bit more cautious because there may not be 16 games, so every game sort of matters here.
We're talking with Dr. Sean McMillan, Chief of Orthopedics Sports Medicine for Virtua at Willingboro and Camden. And Doc, if you were the team doctor for either the Phillies or the Eagles or even Sixers or Flyers, would you lean on, depending on the injury, but would you be more pro surgery right away, or you be in favor of more of a slower, what would your philosophy be? Get that surgery right away, or try to do other things before? Before you go further?
I honestly think you can't think that thought pattern. As a physician, your job is to think about the player for the long term. The player and their agent may have their own thoughts on things. But again, you look at Rhys. Typically, you may shut this down for a couple of weeks, but with the season coming to an end, he's going to gut through it, knowing that his fallback is surgery, right? So he's probably putting himself a little bit out there. Whereas if he took maybe a month off to let this thing heal, and he might have a better chance of going non-surgical. But by and large, the injuries we're seeing predominantly, these are all sort of fatigue injuries. These are hamstrings or quads. There are other strains of the pec. So, again, these are things that you just can't help. And they're usually non-surgical. It's just more conditioning.
Right. Problem is they're running out of time, especially for baseball. Rhys, and there's really probably no kind of a brace or anything that would help something like that. So it's got he's got to play through that, and that's probably what he's going to have to do for the rest of the season.
Yeah, think of Allen Iverson's compression sleeve he used to wear. You can wear sleeves like that to sort of decrease the inflammation on the nerve and give a little pressure to the ligament to help it during the game. But you're right, there's no big brace that he's going to be able to play and function in.
Yeah.
Well, Doctor, I got to be honest with you, man. It's just these injuries, it's just getting very frustrating, especially like Scooter just alluded to, the hamstring. I know, for an offensive lineman, he's got to push up. You're having resistance pushing against somebody, but for Miles Sanders, he's got to be explosive, and that could just snap at any time, right?
Yeah, that's. The thing about Miles, that's his whole game is speed and being elusive, and if you don't have that, you're not Miles Sanders. At that point, you're a detriment to the team almost. So when you think about Miles, you watch him on the sideline. He's going to keep moving this weekend. So they don't want him sitting still. They don't want him getting cold or getting tight. They're going to keep stretching him out on the sideline. They're going to get him over on the table. They may even have the stationary bike out there for him just to keep him loose and going.
All right, Doc, we got the Housemaster. I'm going to get you involved in our Housemaster home inspection Twitter poll question today. Who was more responsible for last week's Eagles loss to Washington? Doug Peterson, Carson Wentz, the offensive line, or the running backs?
Offensive line.
All right, Doc.
That's great.
Well, listen, man. Hey, how's our buddy Louis Manzo doing? The mayor of Mantua.
Listen, he's doing a great job keeping us safe in Mullica Hill and updated. Lou's a great guy, and we're all lucky to have him down here in Mullica Hill.
Well, Doc, listen, man, I really appreciate you taking time out. I know when we have some injury news, we like to go to you to keep us informed and up to date with our sports teams. Thank you so much.
No problem, guys. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
You too, man.
There's Dr. Sean McMillan from Chief of Orthopedics and Sports Medicine, Scooter.